Hello friends, welcome back again for object oriented programming. In last sessions we had a discussion related to how we can gradually grow from structure oriented programming to object oriented programming. To continue these sessions, okay, let us understand today's session is actually dedicated for how a structure oriented programmer will think. And as I explained to you that today's need, that all the compilers available today, whether it's a Java, .NET, PHP, C#, Python, every compiler is an object oriented programming approach we need to follow while developing the codes using these compilers over there. So object-oriented programming is a need of today's hours over there. So we need to convert that basics structure and procedure-oriented programming to object-oriented programming. So the difference is the approach, right? The programming paradigm we are following, that is object-oriented. Object-oriented means like the way the programming has to be converted. So today I'm going to explain you some through examples that how structure and procedure oriented programmer thinks, and to overcome the limitations of structure and procedure oriented programming, how we can able to convert into the object oriented programming over there. Let us discuss it one by one. So today's session is actually dedicated to converting that all the structure oriented programming to object oriented program. Just understand one point, that to overcome the limitations what we get in a structure and procedural programming, we need to change the programming approach, and that changed program approach is called as object oriented programming approach. In last sessions we had a discussion that structure oriented programming was not able to provide the data security, right? Because we are writing programs for processing data and data was not secured. One thing used for one reason, right? Limited set of library. So many limitations were there in the approach of structure and procedural programming. And to overcome that all the structure and procedural oriented programming limitations, it is recommended to go with the object oriented programming. So let's focus on in today's session how we can able to convert that all the programs or the programming approach which we follow in the structure and procedure oriented to the object oriented over there, right? So the programming language which I am using to develop these tools today, that is C++. Okay. So first of all, let us understand a column. Okay, let's say if a structure oriented programmer is there and he want to develop a code, read a number to find factorial. Are you getting me? Means how the structure oriented programmer will think if you want to generate a program which will accept a number and convert into the factorial of it. So obviously what we need a function for finding factorial. As I am saying, it's a procedural programming, so function is compulsory. We need to write a function for finding factorial, and then we need to refer that functions from the main. Let's go for the programming of it. Okay, so I will structured slash procedural oriented program for finding factorial of a given number. As you know, the formula for factorial, n factorial equals to n into n minus 1 into, you have to hold the multiplications till the value of n reduces up to 1. So I'm completely using the C++ library now. iostream.h io manip.h conio.h. You are using C++ library. It doesn't mean that you are using a programming approach that is object oriented. This is completely the structure oriented programming approach what I am following. Structured and procedure oriented programming what I am following. So what I will do now, I'll define a function for finding factorial, right? And here I will write a functions int facto, int n, and here I'll write the function prototype. Int factor of integer is a prototype of it. Then I will declare a variable and prompt the user to enter a number to find the factorial, and I input a number over there, right? And then I will call this function factorial of n, means the value of actual n is equal to, here I will refer the function factor and pass on the value of n as an argument and go to the new line of it, right? So though I am using the entire C++ library, but the programming approach is only structure and procedure oriented. Now here in the function definitions, the value which you pass on as an argument to the factor, okay, n is having scope in man, so it's a automatic variable, it is having scope in man. So whenever you pass on as an argument to a factor, so it go to the function definitions, and this n is local to this factor. Now here I'll declare a variable int f equals to 1, as I just on the top explain here that factorial is a multiplications of a number till 1. Okay, so you need to set the loop over there while the value of n remains more than 0, means up to 1 we have to reduce the value of n, and f into equals to n. You have to keep on multiplying that value of n, updating value of n to the f, and n minus minus, you reduce the value of n by 1, and then you return the value of f. The resultant value of f factorial is b is returned to the calling area. Look at the function definition over here. Factor is the name of a function, n is you will get as an input, as a number over there. So f equals to 1, as I said, you are holding the multiplications, you have to initialize the factorial as a number, as a 1, while n more than 0, f into equals to n, it is a short form of f equals to f into n. It's like that updated value of n, you are keep on multiplying with the f, and the resultant value is stored again back to the f. And n minus minus means you are reducing the value of n 1 by 1, okay, like respectively, and then till the value of n remains more than 0. That is what the loop over there. So whatever the value of n, keep on multiplying with f, reduce 1 by 1 till the value of n remains more than 0. That is what, in this manner, you have to set the loop, and then you have to return that resultant value. Now one question arises, this is again we are writing a code in C++. Yes, you are right, we are writing a code in C++, but C++ and the object oriented programming and structure and procedure programming, like it's not like, okay, language centric. It means it's an approach. Even you can use a Java compiler and write the code in the structure and procedure oriented. Even you can use a compiler Python and develop a code in the structure oriented. Means structure and procedure oriented and the object oriented is a difference of a programming approach, right? So you have to build the class, you have to protect your data, you have to develop the member functions. That is object oriented. And if you are not doing it, if you are not following the bottom to top programming approach, if you are not thinking about the data protections, right, then it is absolute structure and procedure oriented programming. So this approach, though we are using a library for C++, but this program is a program of structure and procedure oriented. Okay, so this now let us check the code. So let us say structure oriented, okay, factor SOP factor dot C, sorry, C++, okay, SOP factor dot C++, and load the code over here. It's not loaded. Okay, so you do get that. Did not load it. That means SOP factor. Yes, here it is. Okay, and just run it here. Let us if you're getting some difficulties to visualize the code, and make the zoom on. Yeah, here is the code, okay, which we write for finding the factorial, and then let us run this code. Success. Run it. Enter the number. If you enter number is 5, you are getting the factorial of a 5 is 120. Okay. Motive is not to develop a code for finding factorial. Motive is not to learn how to find the factorial. That we already know, that we already discussed in the prior sessions as well. The motive is how I can able to convert my, because this entire though we got the solution, but this is not the effective solutions. It's not the feasible solutions. It's not a object oriented solution, right? Object oriented solutions means it has to be encapsulations. It has to be data protected. It has to be bottom to top programming approach. So this approach is a structure and procedure oriented programming approach. Let us convert the same program into the object oriented, right? Just like we already discussed about the programming approach features over there. Through diagrams, structure and procedure programming. Okay, you have a pre-procedure directives, you have a main and the functions, and this, if you follow this programming approach, it is called as a structure and procedure programming approach. In OOP, you have to develop a class, you have to wrap the data in the private section and the functions in the public sections. That process is called the encapsulations, wrapping that all the data and functions together, and then create the object in the main, and then give a call to the public functionalities, and then you can achieve the objective. And this is exactly the object-oriented programming. If you don't deal with the object, if you don't deal with the class, if you don't deal with the private data, and if you don't deal with the bottom to top programming approach, it is not the OOP approach over there. So many times it's a confusion that, okay, I'm writing a code in Python, but which programming approach you are following, that is also important, right? So let us convert this code now to the OOP. So I will rewrite it again. Okay. OOP factorial. I always believe to start from the scratch. So I maybe modify that code, but okay, as we are learning the programming over there, it's always better to start with a blank paper and reconstruct it again. It will help us to recollect, right? And how much time it will take? Maybe 5 minutes more. No issues. OOP factorial now. iostream.h, that remains the same. Library will be the same. iomani.h hash include conio.h. That's not a column. The only thing what you have to do, you have to construct a class firstly, maybe class facto. This is what the difference, right? Bottom to top programming approach. The last thing, the logic of the program, what the set of the variables you required, the functionalities what you required, that you have to define on the top, right? I'll write the comments. Define a class facto, right? And what data you required in the private means to protect the data. To protect the data, we need to use the format specifier. We have to keep it in the zone. We have to keep it declared in the section of a private. Okay, so we need a variable. I'll protect it, and then I'll go with the public section, right? Here I will firstly define the void get data, right? Now get data will get the data from the user. Okay, now here I am defining a parameterized get data, and so the value of n will be get initialized to no. This get data will get a call. The object of facto will give a call to the get data and pass on the inputted values from the user to no, and that no will be initialized to n. Okay, I'll explain you later on how it is functioning, right? And then you have to define the show data. This is just like to initialize the private data belongs to the class. We have to write this get data and show data, and then see out the value of n is so and so, right? And then now these two functions, now these functions are not there is a difference. We are as these functions are wrapped in a facto class, we are saying it's a member functions of facto. They are not the global functions. There is a difference between the functions and member functions, right? In object-oriented programming, these functions are called as the member functions because they belong to one class, right? And this data is not a global variable. It's a data member. So the collection of data member and the member functions is called as a class, right? So here show data will show the data. And then you define the function for factorial int facto. As you are going to process the data which belong to class, there is no arguments required. Okay, so facto will be there, and then int f equals to 1. Process will be the same while n more than 0. N f into equals to n minus minus, the same what I discussed, the entire procedure for finding factor that you have to write over here, and return the value of f. Okay, so here this is your end of class. Okay, let's go with the class definition. Let's discuss the class definition again. Class facto, we define a class. Then in the private, what is private? Why private? The data, to protect the data. We discussed in structure-oriented programming approach that because of we need to declare the data in the global section to make it accessible in the main or in the various functionalities. And if you keep the data in the global section, obviously wear and tear of data is possible because its accessibility is anywhere else, right? So to protect the data, we need to define this data in the private sections, and then everything, the functionalities, we need to define in the public. The reason is you can call them. There is no harm to call the functionalities, but there is a harm to access the data directly in the global scope. Right, so they recommended that not to access data globally. Right, outside the scope of class, data should not be accessible directly. We'll be discussing in the later sessions, okay, about the access modifiers, private, public, protected, and all in the great details. But right now, today we are discussing how I can convert my structure-oriented programming to object-oriented programming over there. So if I am an object-oriented thinker, if I am following the approach of object-oriented, it means I need to think about the encapsulation. I need to think about the private, public functionalities and private data members over there, right? So class factorial, here you have to define the private data, then you define that public functionalities, get data, show data, and factorial, and then you go to the main now, okay? Bottom to top, the firstly, that all logical thinking, all prototype I define firstly, and then I'm going to refer it into the main. So main is always last now here. So go to the main, and fine enough, you whenever you run the program, it gives a call from the main. So clear the screen, ask the user to input the data of which you want to find the factorial of, cout, enter a number, and say so he will enter the number, and then to give a call to the factorial, okay. So you need to create the object of factor, ft is object. Now ft dot get data, and pass on this end. Now this class is having a name factor. You got a private data, you got a functionalities. Now to access that all the functionalities, you have to create the object. As we discussed prior, your class is a user defined type. We define it. We define its properties and behaviors. Right? We define entities of the object while defining the class over there. So class is a collection of data members and member functions. So class is a logical part. You don't have a physical shape. It's a logic. And whenever you create the object of it, now facto ft. Now this ft become the object. Now this ft become the instance. Now this ft will get the rights to access that all the properties and behaviors which are wrapped, which are encapsulated in the class, right? So facto ft. Now ft dot get data n. So the data, it will give a call to this get data. The data which you pass on from the calling area, this no will get that data, and then no will be get initialized to n. Then if you want to show the data, ft dot show data, will display the data, okay, and then cout factorial of n, and you are giving the call to ft dot factor function, right? Ft dot factor, and whenever you are giving call to ft dot factor, it will refer to this process, find out the factorial and return that value, right? Let us try this. Hope you understand it. You define the class firstly as a factor, private data, public functionalities, get data, show data factor, and then you get back to the main. You accept the data from the user, and then you give a call to the get data, show data, and then find the factorial of it, right? Let us run this now. I'm giving OOP factor, sort of the name as OOP factor dot cpp. Okay. Now reload the code. OOP factor. Okay. So OOP. Fine. This is what the code we developed for the finding factorial of a given number. That is completely object oriented now. Let's run the code, run this code. Okay, we are successful. Enter the number. Obviously, you will get the same result. It means I'm just trying to explain you things are there. Whether it's a structure-oriented programming, whether it's object-oriented programming, the user point of view, he may not be identifying what logic is written and which approach they follow. If you, as a user, if I run the previous program also, when you enter the number 5, it was giving you the output 120, and here is also object-oriented, the same thing over there. So user point of view, you will not understand what the code he had written, but like if he develop the code in the structure-oriented programming, there is no extensibility, there is a limits, there is no data security, and in case of that's why structure-oriented programming, object-oriented programming is a programming approach followed by a user, followed by a developer, right? Application will be the same, the execution will be the same, but to achieve the advantages of programming, we need to follow this particular programming approach. It means it's an approach for the developers, right? To achieve the data security, extensibility, one thing used for many reasons, encapsulations. These all the features or more, many more than that in the coming. We'll be discussing in the coming sessions. That all the things are actually object-oriented programming. Hope you understand it. Okay. So this like here we'll find how we can convert this entire code of structure-oriented programming factor. Okay, here is structure-oriented program factorial programming, and then we convert into the object-oriented factorial over here. My today's agenda is to just how we can think about the structure-oriented and how we think about the object-oriented over there. Again, I am saying object-oriented is a need. All the leading compilers are following the programming approach of object-oriented, right? So that it's a gradual approach. We learn how to drive the bicycle, and now we are learning how to drive the moped, how to drive the car, sort of. It's like both are operates on the wheels, but the approach is changed, right? So we have to follow this object-oriented programming approach. But before that, how the structure-oriented programmer is think it's an approach. Right? It's an approach to do the programming over there. So how the structure-oriented things, how the object-oriented things, that is the difference, right? So hope you understand this. So now let's go for the next another questions over there. Now to practice it more, let us firstly structure-oriented program, procedure-oriented program for. Let us take a simple way. Let's say. Okay, for read a name and print for 20 times. Yes, you have to read any name, and if you want to print for the 20 times, first of all, structure-oriented programming will work with the C++, and the same program will convert into by using the functions. We can convert into the object over there. I'm taking simple examples because I don't want to. I'm discussing the programming approach, not exactly the programming logic. Programming logic we enough solved in C. Programming logic we enough solved in different compilers. Approach is more important. So take a simple example and first of all understand what is class, what is private, public. This is more important. How to convert that top to bottom programming approach to the bottom to top programming approach. That is more important, right? So read a name and print it for 20 times. As we know all the logic over there. So we'll go with the C++ iostream.h, iomoney.h, tonio.h. Okay. Then you develop a function called as print name, and you will be reading a name as an argument, right? It's a prototype, so you don't declare the variable over here, and here it's a structure and procedure programming. So void main, you start with a void main, and then clear the screen and character the name of and cout enter your name. Okay, and see name, and then you build a function called as void print name, and here is like you have function definitions which will hold the value of that. Then you have to print the name for the 20 times. Okay, so for integer I equals to 1, I less than equals to 20, I plus plus, see out, okay, the value of I, and then you have a space and you can print that name and go to the end line. That's it. With the counter that name will be printed for 20 times. Okay, and here you can print name for 20 times. I'm picking very simple example to understand, right? And just give a call to print name. It's a void functions, not returning any values. So the functions which is not returning any values, it has to define as a void. And why this function has to define as a void? Because there is no return value. At the same time, you are returning, if you are trying to return, then 20 outputs you are generating, 20 times you are printing now. So it's not possible to return 20 values. That's why it's a better idea to define as a void type one. So print name, give a call to it, and then pass on this nm. So this nm will be passed on, what you read from the user will be passed on as an argument. It goes to this print name, hold it in the local variable, and print that name for the 20 times. Okay, so I'll be writing SOP name sort of .cpp and load this code again. SOP name .cpp and run it. Here you can check it. The same code is there which I imported, and run it. Fine. So enter your name. Let us say if I enter my name and I'm going to print it. Yeah, 25. Okay, look at that. Whatever the name you'll input, you'll able to print it for 20 times. That is what actually, with the counter, I'm printing all the names over there. So, as I said, my motive is to not develop a complicated programming. I'm discussing about the programming approach. So, like logic of program is not important right now. The approach is more important. So here is the structure and procedure-oriented program I defined for reading a name and convert it to print it for the 20 times. Let us convert the same program into the object-oriented now, right? So as I told you again, let us start from the scratch. Okay, instead of modifying the same code, I will define OOP version of read name and print for 20 times. Now this is completely object oriented, so let's iostream.h or use money.h. It's object oriented, so I'll write class print multi is a class maybe. Okay, so what has to be the private data? That is the name of an individual. Okay, so you take it in the private, and the public data you can say get data. You define the parameterized get data, username, and this here you have to, as you are dealing with the string type of data, so we'll be needing string.h. Okay, because string cannot be directly assigned, it has to be it has to copy. Okay, so strcpy nm and then unm. whatever user input over there, that will be copied to this NM here. Hope you agree with me. Then you define show data. Okay. You can print the name, but like as the question is not to print the name for one time, you have to print the name for multiple times over there. So there is no need of show data. If I directly write the define the print name function, void print name is a functions, and then for integer I equals to 1, I less than equals to 20, I plus plus, cout the counter and the space, okay, and then the name of the person. That's it. So how we can convert my structure-oriented programming to object-oriented? Okay, structure-oriented programming we already discussed. It starts with the main, we read the name and pass on to the functions accept it and print it for 20 times. Now here in the object-oriented, first of all we have to start with a class. We have to keep the data in the private sections. We have to define the get data, define the public functions, and then after that you go to the main. Okay, and then clear the skins bottom to top. That is the key. Encapsulation is the key, right? And then clear the skins, and then you already you have to accept a username. So you read cout enter name cnn, right? And then you create the object of this print multi class. Print multi pm dot get data, and pass on this nm as an argument. So this the input from the user will be passed on to get data, and this unm local variable will hold that data and assign to the nm. In this manner the private data will be initialized, right? And then if you say pm dot print name, because print name is a method, is a function, is a function, member functions we define to print that name for 20 times, right? Hope you understand it. So print multi is a class, nm is a private data, get data is a functions, right? And then print name. So means I'm trying to convert that entire programming approach from structure oriented to object oriented. Here we read the data, create the object, give a call to nm and print name only, right? Let us save it by print name .cpp. Okay, and reload it again. Okay, let's put it in. Reload it again. Yeah, so we print name. Here it is. To read the name of a user and print it for 20 times. The logic is ready in the OOP standards, right? Let us run it now. Okay, declaration terminated incorrectly. Okay, fine. Yeah, okay. Some additive patterns are added over there. Yeah, here's a name. If I input my name, you input a name, the same output. As I said, the output is not a problem for me, or rather not the program logic is not a problem for me. We already discussed such kind of programs in C, or while writing some programs over there in C++ as well. So looping, branching, functioning, that is not a problem. I want to discuss the programming approach, how to convert my structure-oriented programming to the object-oriented programming. So to summarize this, this what we discussed up till now, that is object-oriented programming is today's need. And structure-oriented means, okay, declare the variables on the top, divide that main procedure into the various sub-process. That approach is called as a structure-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming means we have to think about the encapsulations. We have to keep the data in the private sections. We have to write the public functionalities wrapped in a class, then create the object and then refer to the methods over there. So we need to follow the object-oriented programming approach. Today we tried how we can convert that structure-oriented programs into the object-oriented programs over there. Hope you understand this everything's well, right? And your comments and the queries will be expected over there, right? Thank you.